Welcome. My name's Maddie Harland from the Permaculture Magazine YouTube channel. And today we're welcoming Liz Zorab, who's the author of Grounded and The Seasoned Gardener. So welcome, Liz. I'm so happy to see you today. Brilliant.
Hello, Maddie. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. Tell me a little bit about mixing up your flowers and your veg, because I love that sort of naturalistic garden, and often once you garden at scale, which I think you are, it tends to turn a little bit market gardeny and straight rows and although there's a polyculture, it's quite regimented, but your gardens are much more naturalistic, and they almost look like nature's sown them, although we know that you're deftly working away in the background.
Yes. So in our previous home, I created a vegetable garden, and then I sowed some calendula and some borage and some dill and other things. And then after a couple of years, they escaped the beds and grew in the pathways. And I was like, well, they're really pretty. So I left them, and they got more and more. And I also created a straight row market garden, almost on the other side of the garden. In the middle, I put a flower garden. And when I put the flowers there, I went, this is what I've been missing. This is what this place has been missing. So when we moved here, I very intentionally said, the first thing I'm going to create in my vegetable garden is the beds, and then I'm going to put in the flowers. And then my vegetables go around the flowers, because it's the flowers that feed my soul. And to keep going out year after year and carry on growing all that food, I need to feel like I love the place and love the space that I'm working in. So I intentionally put the flowers in first. And yes, I have to move them. I'm constantly moving them around. Clumps get too big, even in 2 years. Clumps of lupins have really outgrown their allotted space. So I've moved them into the food forest. And no, they're not edible lupins, but that's another story. And and so I've just been really conscious of, let's make this garden look beautiful. And much like the old-fashioned cottage gardens, or as you say, more naturalistic. I mean, in some ways there's fewer grasses, so it hasn't got that kind of natural grassy look about it.
Yeah, it's not prairie gardening.
Not prairie gardening. But there, what I wanted was, when you look across the garden, you see a flower garden first, and then you realize it's a vegetable garden, rather than you look and you see a vegetable garden with some flowers in it. So it was a very conscious effort to create something that was beautiful and functional, rather than functional with some beauty.
So tell me a little bit about what flowers you grow.
So I'm growing a sort of a vast array of flowers. So lots of things that I loved as a child, things that I've loved as I've been growing up. As you enter the vegetable garden, 2 new beds as you walk through the gate into the vegetable garden. There are 2. One's a very large square bed, and large, it's probably 15 feet square, that sort of size, and a triangular bed. And the very first plant that you come to is a rose that is called Jeff Hamilton.
Oh, I was just thinking about Jeff Hamilton as you were talking about this idea of mixing, the cottage garden, but it's like an Uber cottage garden.
It's like Uber one, absolutely.
But he was the first organic gardener that really he wrote a book about it, and he really talked a lot about it.
It really, really inspired me. So I was so pleased to find a rose called Jeff Hamilton. It's there consciously at the beginning of the garden to remind me, every time I walk in, this was my muse. This is the person who completely inspired me to grow. And he's every day, it's reminding me. And I like, call me sentimental, but I'm very happy to have that reminder every time I walk into the garden.
Well, there is a thing, you know, Liz, called vitamin G, and it's, of course, is the vitamin of gratitude. And like when, so every time you walk in the garden and you have gratitude for Jeff Hamilton and how much he taught us, you're nurtured by it,
Yes,
inspired and
absolutely.
energized. So, you know, that's another dimension to that seasonal wisdom, is also this remembering who's inspired you and who's taught you things.
So the flowers, I've tried to put in things that will provide colour and scent right through the year. So I had to do quite a lot of digging around to find things that were going to give me colour and fragrance in the depths of winter.
Oh, so give us some examples.
So things like witch hazels, which are just have an incredible scent.
Yeah,
So I actually have a separate to the veg garden, I have a whole border that I have dedicated to shrubs, so a proper old-fashioned shrubbery, and it is full of those plants, and I've put a couple of them into the veg garden. And then inevitably there are spring flowers, which are actually around the veg garden rather than in it. I think I've
because they
got a
tend to be
few.
bulbs, don't they?
They do. There's a few great hyacinths,
Yeah.
which will get moved, I suspect, because I keep
Well, they'll
looking.
probably also move themselves, knowing them.
Well, yes, but I
Don't
did when they came up this year. I thought, is that garlic of some sort? Is that a perennial garlic? And I sort of picked it up and looked, no, don't know what that is. And then when they flowered, it was like, I need to move those, but they're white ones and they're
oh,
really
lovely.
pretty. So I need to be careful where I move them to. But I have tried to make sure that there will be things that will be in flower and provide fragrance right through the year, because I still want to be invited out to the veg garden, right, you know, even in the depth of winter, and not just to do the things that I have to do, like harvesting for food, but it would be really nice to be able to go out and say, are any of those in flower? Do any of those smell nice?
But isn't it blissful also when you have a little place where you sit and dream and look, and
Yes.
and and that's when those times when you get a, a, a sunny day, a crisp, cold, sunny day in midwinter, and you go outside and the winter jasmine might be flowering or the first snowdrops are coming up, and it lifts the heart. I
I
mean,
have a particular face for days like that winter sunshine, and I just do this. My, my whole face goes up, and I'm like one of those little flowers following the sunshine.
do you have a special sit spot where you go and
I
sit,
do.
or do you
I
have
am
new?
developing sit spots all over the garden now.
Right,
It's depending on where they are, and
time of day and seasons.
yes, absolutely. And you know, when it's lovely, I want to sit at the top of the hill and look out across the valley and the hills across opposite us. In the winter, when we're just grabbing that little bit of sunshine, I want to sit still where I'm kind of sheltered by things around me, but still be able to get a bit of that sunshine on my face. So, you know, which is at the bottom of the hill, facing a different direction. So I am trying to develop spaces that I can perch or sit very comfortably for various different lengths of time.
So we've talked a little bit about Jeff Hamilton. Is there anyone else that has been a real inspiration to you as a gardener and shaped how you garden and how you experiment?
Oh, there've been lots of them. So Christopher Lloyd, who is just his writing is so funny. It absolutely speaks to me. He's very irreverent about plants that he doesn't like, and I love that. And then Rosemary Very, or Vere, I don't know how we say her name. She had a way of combining the formal and the informal. So clipped hedges and formal pathways with then billowing over blousy growth behind it. And I really liked that combination of here's something very, very controlled and very controlling, but it's only all it's doing is just being a fortress against this thing behind it, which is going to escape into take everything over. And it was just this riot of colours and mixtures of plants, and I just I loved that, the combination of the calm and the still of the clipped hedges, and then the riot of plants behind it.
So you've been gardening for, oh, how many years? I mean,
Yes, a lot.
a lot.
40 plus, yes.
40, so a good season or two.
Yes.
Um, so, but you're always dreaming up the new. So you've just talked to me about integrating the flowers and the veg and growing the veg around the flowers instead of growing veg and then planting flowers, and you know, having more formal zones. What's kind of what's being birthed in your imagination, do you think, this year? What's your new stuff that you're discovering?
This year, I think probably the thing I've learned, there are plants I'm going to grow, probably not even to eat. I will eat them, but I'm going to grow them anyway. So sweet corn, I'm having a love affair with sweet corn at the moment.
Yeah.
Those plants are just amazing, to go from such a tiny seed to these sort of 5 or 6 feet high plants, and they are just, you know, I just find them fascinating, and they're robust and they're beautiful, and I love the colour green about them, and I want to plant a swathe of them and just almost have them like a plantation. Not, I don't literally mean plantation, but imitating that with then, and I've got it this year, I've got other grasses and millets and things growing underneath them, but I want to do more of that, and I want to just to enjoy, because they sound great. So there's quite a lot of listening in the garden this year, listening to the sounds that plants are making, and some of them, so lots of brassicas squeak as the leaves
Yes.
move. They're quite squeaky. That doesn't mean I'm going to discount them, but I just don't think I necessarily want an orchestra of squeaky vegetables. But I do like things that rustle, or they rustle as the wind goes through them. So grassy things make nice noises. But yes, so sweet corn this year has been a delight. And I want to plant lots more things like leaving parsnips to go to seed, and let fennel grow to seed, so that we've got lots and lots of sort of very light, airy flowers in the garden, because they also
Of
make
course, are
really nice
wonderful
noises.
for insects.
They're wonderful for insects, and they're great for the sound thing. So I think this year has probably been thinking about sound.
Interesting. I didn't expect you to say that, I have to say. That's really good. And I mean, we haven't even mentioned it, but I think we ought to say something about having this mix of all sorts of different vegetables, all sorts of different flowers, makes for a very healthy, robust polyculture. And it's also, you're bringing in tons of insects which are eating the pests.
Yes.
And I assume that you've got frogs coming in and toads.
Yes, I'm gonna say it's not a quick process. So as Mr.
No.
J reminded me the other day, we are only on year 2.
Yeah.
There wasn't a garden established here
No.
before,
It was
so
a penny paddock, wasn't it?
it was. So it is absolutely from the word go.
Yeah.
And this year there are definitely more pests than there are predators.
Yeah.
And the rain has allowed the slug population to enjoy itself. But with that's brought in more birds. You know, there are definitely more birds coming in, and you know, I can see there's a lot more insects starting to come in. We've got there must be frogs, because we had frogs spawn, and we've now got little tiny froglets. But I haven't seen anything bigger than a tiny froglet. They disappeared off into the long grass. No doubt they'll reappear at some point. So we are still in the process of developing the right balance. And I know that in your previous home, you had an absolutely wonderful balance of pest predators.
Yeah, but not at first, because it was an arable field. So for the first so we planted a wildflower meadow, and for the first few years it just was plantain, ribwort, and which was like a scab, because there was no topsoil, no worms, no soil mycorrhiza, no life. It was dead, sprayed to death, and all the good soil had washed away or been ploughed away. So it was a bit apocalyptic at first to try and grow. I mean, we even had slugs climbing up the apple trees trying to eat the leaves. They were, it was just awful. And then we just planted all sorts of, we planted a native hedgerow as a windbreak, and that grew up, and that created a microclimate, and slowly, and we put in yellow rattle, and that got the grasses a bit under control, and slowly the plantain receded and the wildflowers came in, and the vegetable beds, we put raised beds in, and we had no topsoil, so we filled them up with anything we could, shredded paper, cardboard, homemade compost, and any organic straw, rotted it down, just anything that we could. And it took years, and we built lots of ponds, and eventually it all came into good heart. And by the time we left in 2021, the end of 2021, we had orchids blooming in what was the arable field. But it took a long time for this place to recover, nearly 20 years for the orchids. But the veg grew well, and we had amazing veg in lockdown, because obviously you couldn't go anywhere. So what did you do? Go to work on your computer and garden. It was the best vegetable garden I've ever had. It was brilliant, and tons of flowers.
And actually, we had weather-wise, we had not a bad year.
It was good weather that year too.
And I do feel for all the people who took up gardening.
Yes.
During lockdown, because
and then
3 years since then have been. 2021 was okay, but was quite hot, and 22 was incredibly hot and dry, and this year started off cold, wet,
very cold,
then bitter hot and very dry, and it seems to have rained for about the last forever. Those 5 or 6 weeks. And for new gardeners, that must be really difficult. And
what is your tip for these poor new gardeners who've got inspired by people like you on YouTube? And
persevere. And do you know what? Every year is a new start.
Yes.
So, we're coming to September. You've got a chance to clear some spaces, make more compost, get things in ready to be growing over the winter. And it's just that whole thing of it's don't put your garden to bed for winter. Keep doing it. Keep it moving along, and we have this whole chance to do all new stuff next year, and another go, and another lot of warm weather. And we just have to hope we don't get this pattern of drought and flood every single summer, because at that point, well, I think another couple of years, and I'm going to be changing how I grow. If it continues like this, I'll be experimenting like mad. But that's the thing. There is no hard and fast rule. There is no do this and I can guarantee it will be right, because we can't. There are always so many factors, and that's what makes gardening, to me, so incredibly interesting.
Exactly. So a couple of things I'll pick from that is something that we did this year after the drought the year before, was that we made sure that our rainwater harvesting systems were as capacious as possible for the period of drought, and were completely cleaned out, and all the downpipes were functioning well, and there was no blockages in the system, so that hopefully we wouldn't run out of rainwater during the drought period. And then it rained torrentially, and we thought, right, we're going to get all of our rainwater soakaways sorted out, because we discovered that we had enormous amounts of silt and stones in our soakaways blocking up our drainage system and making the house damp. You know, very obvious things, but like things, how we respond to the seasons and how we respond to climate chaos effectively is to be more organized and resilient.
It is, and it's to react as soon as you see those things,
Yeah.
rather than putting them on the bottom of a to-do list. They need to go on the top of your to-do list, because by the time you get around to them, another whole year will have gone past and it will still be there on your list. So in some ways, reacting to the lack of water, or the excess of water, or the too much sunshine, so you need to find some way of putting in shade.
Yeah.
All of those things are really worth doing as soon as.
Yeah, because, you know, in Cuba, when they had the organic revolution, when they lost the Soviet oil and had no artificial fertilizer inputs and no imported food, they had to learn how to build shade gardens. And I think that's something that we're going to have to get better at as our climate changes, but they've got to be shade gardens that can be easily dismantled for the times when it then becomes torrential rain and
very
and the
high
light.
winds, which would take the shade gardens off.
So the whole thing's, we've just got to become much more robust and adaptive to this climate, but it doesn't mean that we can't garden and we can't learn new things.
Oh, absolutely. And that whole thing of every day is a school day just means every day is good fun.
Well, this is really, for me, the essence of the seasoned gardener, is that you have this lovely flexibility where the sun's shining and you're sitting in your sit spot with your cup of tea, looking at the flowers and looking at what's growing and looking at the insects and the birds that are coming in, and just really enjoying the place as an ecosystem, as well as a productive place and a place that's beautiful. And also you've got schemes and plans and creative ideas that you're going to give time to in the winter that are bubbling along, perhaps not in the notebook in your pocket, but the one thing you didn't mention is that you also write often, you know, not perhaps in the darkest part of midwinter, but you do write in those less busy seasons.
Yes. Yeah.
And that you're dreaming, it's a really creative time, both outside and also in your inner life.
Yes. It's that I find the words flow more easily when I've got time to sit and to think. When I'm out there doing and watching, I don't want all those words buzzing around in my head, really. I want to be enjoying and being a part of what's going
Connected.
on inside. Yeah, I want to be connected. And I don't really need into I must get that written, I must include this, or have I done that? Did I add that?
Don't want to be in your head.
No, I don't. I want to be part of what's going on around me.
And so, in essence, that's really what gardening is to you, isn't it?
Yes, it's absolutely is. So gardening is being a part of being enveloped by, and being utterly enmeshed with. And I listened to and you're going to have to help me out with her name because I can't remember. Rebecca, is it Hoskins?
Hoskin, yeah.
Yes. So I listened to
Hosking.
her talk a couple of years ago about there being us and being nature. Most of us go, you know, we're sitting there surrounded by nature. And I talk about that, being surrounded by nature. And she said, but actually, we are a part of nature. And that blew my mind. That absolutely made me go, yes, that's absolutely right. We are part and parcel. It's all one thing. And so that's what I want to do. I want to consciously enjoy and celebrate being a complete part of that.
Yes, no more us and them.
Yeah.
Just all.
All.
All that is. Well, that's a really lovely place perhaps to complete, and unless there's anything else that you would like to add.
I think we're absolutely there, other than to say, if you do enjoy the seasoned gardener, please keep going back, because there are gems hidden in it that you may miss the first time.
And that's the abundance and the fun of it, isn't it? It's
Oh, it is.
such
Yeah,
an adventure.
all the time.
So thank you so much, Liz, for being in conversation. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening to this conversation. And if you've enjoyed it, please do like our channel, and we'd love it if you subscribed as well, and then you could hear more about the interesting and wonderful people that I get to talk to in my working life. So that's enough for today, but thanks very much, Liz, for being here.